One. We're on! Hey everyone, welcome to a Star Wars Legends podcast, episode 5. And I know it's been almost 2 months, but I'm Jeremy at Stupid Chainsaw Productions. With me today, we have our reoccurring co-host. He sometimes is John Sadler, but we know him as Dylan.
John Tuttle, not Sadler.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I meant Sadler. And then with us, we got a special guest, Mr. Matt Wilkins. So, Matt, I hate to put you on the spot here, but this is protocol when I have a new guest host.
Okay.
I like to ask you a brief history of how you got into the EU. Now, personally, Dylan and I know that, but most of my subscribers do not. So
That's fine. Yeah, no problem. I got into the EU basically from the very beginning, I guess you could say, like the old Marvel comic books. But as a kid, I didn't read them all because there's no such thing as a comic book store. You could just find them at the drugstore here and there, and I didn't like continuing a story that I never read the comic book prior to or maybe the month after. So after a lot of sloshing around and leaving Star Wars, I came back in just like half of America did with Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Jedi, and I've been a big fan ever since. And I do a little web series called Matt's Expanded Universe, where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best I know how.
And Matt means heir to the Empire, not heir to the Jedi.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I get those. Ever since I did that review, I get them mixed up. But Heir to the Empire, yes, not the ripoff of Heir to the Jedi. I don't read the new stuff.
Yes. Matt usually has his furry Ewok companion with him, Yubnub, but Yubnub's probably sleeping right now because it's kind of late where Matt is.
He's out visiting his girlfriend, actually. It's a Twi'lek.
Oh my! I don't want to
ask.
hear about furry porn, dude. That's not what the podcast is about.
What can I say? He likes to party and he doesn't wear pants. What do you expect when you watch him on a weekend night?
He wears a hood, though.
Yes, he does.
Except for when he's being Chuck Wendig. Which we'll get into a little Chuck Wendig talk and some Battlefront predictions, as well as our main event, which, Dylan, what is that?
The rise and fall of Dark Horse comics. At least they're Star Wars comics.
I want to make a prediction about Battlefront.
Okay.
I won't be playing it.
I was gonna say something similar because I too also will not be playing it.
But I will.
What? Oh, there's only one traitor among us, Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
I know that book back there, trader. I got it for a reasonable price because it's loosely
Jeremy,
30 pieces of
in all
silver.
seriousness, no.
That's what it calls.
In all seriousness, no. It's okay. All right. All you need to do, Jeremy, is say 10 Hail Maras and 5 I am your fathers, and your sins will be forgiven.
Good God.
And you got to answer that phone.
No, I never got that. I'm in no shape now to even begin to answer the phone.
All right, we're rambling here.
Okay, well,
we're rambling. What's the first topic? We're rambling.
Well, any questions from the previous episode? I know we had one comment that I wanted to talk about briefly here.
The Geek Addict said that the best part of the Clone Wars was the credits to the last season because it was over forever.
That's funny. That's funny.
But
wow.
He does have a point.
Well, yeah, he does, and he's got a very interesting viewpoint coming up because I asked him that once he finished, what was it, Aftermath or whatever he was reading, I wanted him to compare the new EU books to the worst of the old EU books and seriously do a top 10. Like, where would the EU, now called Legends, worst fit in with these new batch of books? Because I have a feeling, I don't know, I haven't read the new stuff, but I have a feeling the old EU would give the new EU a run for its money. Is that safe to say, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, granted, I've read not even the last two. I've read two of the books now. I don't
Wow, Et
really
tu,
want
Brute?
to. Well, after Aftermath, I had some
I know.
Aftermath
I'm sorry, Jude. Go ahead.
earlier, and it was a lot better than that book. Um, Aftermath is by far, in my opinion, and I think Geeks Addict shares this opinion because he came to me right after while he was reading the book, saying it was awful. He hated it. I hated it, and I think, in my opinion, it's the worst EU book ever written.
A lot of fans didn't have a high opinion of it.
It
A,
is.
a lot of fans who like the Disney new stuff, by the way, I need to add, did not like the book.
Mm-mm.
From what I've been able to tell.
No, it makes
I
Dawn
mean,
the Jedi Into the Void a bestseller.
and by the yeah,
Well,
and
it
by
was
the
a
way,
bestseller.
well, yeah. And by the way, Ordo may be Lord of the Dance, but Chuck Wendig is not a worthy New York Times bestselling author.
No, it's like a seventh grader wrote it.
Yeah, well, he brags that he wrote it in 45 days, and unfortunately, it shows.
Oh, was it 40? I should have made a note of that in my review. Oh,
Yeah,
I
he said he was
especially.
bragging that only took him 45 days. 45 days, you can get a rough draft, maybe, if you're
No,
a regular author. I mean, you
good
look at
rough draft.
it's kind of wild because an outline more or less, because when you look at real New York Times best-selling authors, I mean real ones, like let's get over the. I'm not going to go into Star Wars here. Let's go off the rails into a good best-selling author like Stephen King, like Michael Crichton. I actually just finished some Michael Crichton books, Jurassic Park and Lost World. They are smart books. They're written very well. You can tell a lot of detail, a lot of research was given. I mean, a lot of research was given. He even gives acknowledgments on who all he talked with and studied with and visited. And he writes very smart. But I also know that took probably the better part of a year, or if not more, to get those books out, because you want to make sure you have a good product. I mean, if it hadn't have been for the Star Wars label, this book would have been nothing. I mean, if he would have slapped something else onto it, it would have been nothing. If it had been a Star Trek book, it would have been nothing, I don't think. Only because of the big hype that they had for that series by saying this is the official, for the first time ever, continuation of what happened after Jedi. I mean, it was great marketing. It was great marketing. But fool me once, shame on you. I don't think they're going to fool the fans twice when the sequel comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I gave him some pointers if he ever watches my video on how to write a book. I'm not saying I'm an author or anything, but I think I can write something a lot better than Aftermath. Drunk. I mean, granted, it'd be dictation, because
Well, knowing
we've seen
Wendig's
me
MO, he may
on
be
there.
checking your YouTube, but he's too busy checking other people's Facebook pages and Twitter, so you may have to wait because they
And
get first dibs.
that is another
Share it
thing
on
with.
Twitter, so he'll find it. I'm counting on it. Anyway,
So what's next? I'm sorry, I jumped, but go ahead.
Battlefront. I wanted to talk briefly about the beta that ended like a month ago.
Okay.
It was all right. I don't know what anyone expected out of it. It was a beta. Did you expect the whole game out of it? Of course, it was going to be broken because it's a beta. It was entertaining. It was enjoyable. It was fun. Um, was it as fun as the previous games? Well, no, but we never played those in beta.
Right. Did you play as Benedict Arnold or a Wookiee? Anyway, I'm sorry. So, what do you think of the new release? Is it gonna be all that in a bag of chips?
No, it has. Unfortunately, a little game you might have heard of called Fallout 4 came out last week, and that's going to kind of put a dampener on Battlefront, I think. Because Fallout 4, they're talking about this being one of the best games ever made, period.
I'll be honest, I'm not into video games, but I do hear a whole lot about Fallout 4. I mean, from everyone. It's all over the internet, all over YouTube. I mean, it's a pretty big game. Is that going to be released at the same time as Battlefront?
It's already
Or-
out.
It's already
Oh,
out.
it's already
Yeah.
out. So you think that's taking all the info? Okay.
It's gonna
Haven't
be
you figured out by all of Django's
live
live streams of it?
I mean, Django's probably thirsty now. He's been climaxing so much, man. I mean, he did heed my advice though when I joined in on his first live stream very briefly, and Django, I told him to make a chin like Frank Miller, so he made the squarest chin possible, and I was very happy. Okay, so let's get Battlefront predictions. I don't think it'll sell nearly as well as EA hopes. Part of the problem being that $50 season pass. That's absolutely ridiculous. No one wants to pay that. They'll pay it. They'll buy it when they put it on sale in a year.
That's also one of the reasons I'm really out of video games now. The DLC has just gotten ridiculous now. I mean, they want you to buy the game twice. Instead of giving you the whole game like they used to do, they found out that morons, and I'll be honest, you're morons for paying that much, because you're just enticing them to give you half a game up front, and if you want the other half, we'll give it to you again. And I predict that they're not done with that. There's going to be a third DLC and whatnot. I mean, they're going to try to get as much money out of that game as they can. So with the back in the day when games would cost you maybe $50, $60, and you could get a whole complete game to enjoy, those days are gone. You want the big books, you're going to be paying $120 total for everything, but they're going to keep squeezing you $150, $200 a game.
And it's
How
not
much
only
would
that.
you get? With the same amount of work, by the way. They're not doing anything more special. Yeah, the graphics look good. Of course they do. They always look better. The games are always going to evolve in that sense. But the thing is, though, what you don't understand is games always evolved without the need to break it up into an unnecessary trilogy. DLC, as long as idiots keep paying for it, people are going... I mean, the industry is going to keep that way, and that's a shame because I think if you buy a game, you should have the whole game. I understand if certain features are gone, like the multiplayer, or if they bring out, like, for instance, I've said this before, Arkham City, where, months later they brought out a new map pack or whatever, something they didn't have at the beginning. But it's obvious at the beginning that they have all these maps, they have all this extra stuff, and yet they're only going to give you half the game because they know you're dumb enough to buy the other half in DLC. Not the
You'll
kind
be
of
happy to
business I
know
like.
that I did buy the season pass.
But you did
You did buy it?
pre-order the game,
I did pre-order the game.
which is partly.
Are you going to make an
contributing to what
unboxing video? Are you going to make an
Talking
unboxing
about.
video?
What do you think? I'm some sort of YouTube whore here, Matt? I bashed them for 5 years. You think I'm going to stoop to that level? I don't know.
You know what?
I'm not-
I look forward to the day where you start shilling for money on YouTube.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be like the amazing atheist, and I'm just going to ask for people to give me wedding gifts. Or I'm going to be like Captain Cummings here, and I'm going to ask for money for my cat because I'm too busy buying comic books to pay for my cat. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? Oh, well. Since I want these to go on YouTube, I should probably stop saying things like that before I really go off.
Well, it's
on a rant.
already on YouTube. It's live.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know. Well, not
We
YouTube.
are live? Oh,
iTunes.
I'm glad you said that.
iTunes.
I was about
Anyway,
to make a joke earlier that I was hoping you'd edit out.
don't
But
be,
I'm not going to make it.
don't be Tristan.
No, not those kind. Anyway,
All right, let's get to the main topic here, where Matt derails me all over again. That's Dylan's job, by the way, to derail me.
I'm sorry.
Anyway,
What is the main
So,
topic
Rise-
today?
we're talking about the rise and fall of Dark Horse Comics. Now, Matt, you've been there since the beginning, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was it like
Uh,
at that very beginning?
Well, at first there wasn't that much. I think Dark Horse took their time. They made definitely quality stories to begin with. According to Dave Dorman, who I spoke to earlier this year at Pensacon, he said a lot of care was put into that first series that came out. And every time after that, a lot of thought, a lot of serious. I mean, Tom Beach, was writing stories. Cam Kennedy was there with the art. And be honest, I mean, Cam Kennedy has a style that, in my opinion, no one has copied. He has such a unique style, and it's very rare these days to have an artist who just, it was so good, but yet does not have anyone who draws like him. There are a few out there, I know, but Cam Kennedy was one of them who just did amazing art. Tom Veitch was there with the story. Everything about their first few works together just clicked. Of course, Dave Dorman's cover art definitely, makes you look twice at the comic book rack and pick it up. Back in the early days, he didn't have that much out from Dark Horse. I mean, because remember, Star Wars didn't get their big oomph until the books came out, Timothy Zahn's trilogy, and then after that, they started working more hand in hand and delivering out some good stuff. They still gave quality stuff. But Dark Horse at the very beginning, I remember I was younger back then, but I remember Dark Empire coming out. I remember that just the covers just looked amazing, and based on the covers themselves, I didn't pick them up because I didn't think they were part of the original story. Because back then you didn't realize that everything was connected. Even though Howard Rothman says, even from Marvel days, the old Marvel comic days, everything was connected. But I didn't know that because that's not how franchises worked. Star Trek had a book here, a comic book there, but none of it made sense. None of it connected to the TV shows or whatnot. There was no one big continuity. So with Dark Horse, you didn't know. But I'll be honest, to borrow one of my favorite quotes, I really like that cover. And I remember every time looking at it and just thinking, that looks so super sweet. And when I finally realized that it was part of the expanded universe, oh man, it was on like a chicken bone, and we started buying those things left and right. And I think the only original ones that I could not get, and that's because they went high in value at the time, was the individual Dark Empire. I'd missed out on those, and I found a trade that I picked up real quick, and actually got Dave Dorman to sign it. So I'm very proud of that. Drew me a little, I think it was a Star Destroyer and whatnot, and signed my Dark Horse, Dark Empire trade, which I'm very, very, very proud of. By the way, Dave Dorman is a fantastic guy. If anyone finds him at a Comic-Con, you need to travel, make the trip. Dave Dorman is worth the trip. He's a good guy. He's selling his little art cards or art thing. Buy something from him. I mean, honestly, he's a great guy. He'll talk to you about anything. Doesn't have to be about Star Wars even. He'll talk to you about comic books in general. Like he talked to me about comic books for quite some time and the problems with modern-day comic books. And he doesn't read the big Marvel, the big DC stories anymore. He's looking for unique art. He's looking for that Cam Kennedy, that guy who's not afraid to draw like himself. In today's world, Jeremy, you read a lot of comic books. You know this. There's a lot of copycats out there. And I wouldn't say copycats. That's kind of mean. Let me just say there's people that are influenced. You're influenced by your favorite artist, right? You want to draw like them. Greg Capullo draws like Todd McFarlane. And there's other artists out there who imitate their mentors of people they learned growing up in the business, which is, I mean, Rob Liefeld rips off everyone. Okay, but anyway.
Not well at all, but I mean,
Well, no, he doesn't do it well at all. But the thing is, though, with someone like unique art, of course, Dave Dorman's all about the art, but he wants a good story too. And he said a lot of the good story now, there's a lot of potential with superhero comic books, but now it's like the tail wagging the dog these days as movies influence the comic books and what happens now.
Well, I mean, that's been going on since the first X-Men movie when it came out. They completely changed how Wolverine looked.
Right.
Made him look a lot more handsome, not so.
Yeah, instead of like a dog, that's what he used to look like. But let me ask you guys, how did y'all first come into the Dark Horse era?
Do you want me to go first, Dylan, or you want to do this?
You should. I should probably go first because mine is less. Mine's kind of lackluster. I basically started reading Dark Horse comics after the Disney quote-unquote purge of the expanded universe. Because when I came in, there was just so much of it that it was a bit intimidating. I'll admit it still is as I'm going through it all. But when I first, especially like because how hard comics are to collect, but when that that Humble Bundle that they did that had the Star Wars comics. It had like 12 issues, basically like the first book of 12 issues of comics, and I would just go through all those, and I really enjoyed those stories. So when the Dark Horse Mega Bundle came out, I knew I had to like have these stories just so I could actually go in and go through and I'll read them all. But yeah, I started pretty much right at the end.
And Dylan, actually, you got the best deal ever. I've never seen a deal like the mega deal that Dark Horse did. The send-off, the New Year's Eve send-off countdown. My mouth was open. I could not. But I mean, that whole last 2 months, they were just wheeling and dealing. But when it hit, that one hit what, late November? That deal did the mega deal.
I think it was early to mid-December because they were.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, they lost the rights on the 1st of January, so it was up to the 31st, and it was kind of like,
Okay.
hey, yeah.
An amazing deal. I told people to go ahead and steal, rob from banks, beg, borrow, and steal to get the money to buy that mega deal because you will never find another deal like that ever again. Even though I hear anyone who missed out on the deal and they're upset, I hear if you subscribe to Marvel Now or Marvel Unlimited, right? That's the online digital.
I hate Marvel.
If you sign up to it, though, supposedly it does have all of the Star Wars, Dark Horse.
Most. It doesn't have
most.
Now,
of them.
if you don't know what you're talking about, last year in late December, Dark Horse, since they're losing the rights, gave out a deal which for $300 you got the entire collection of Star Wars comics.
Everything.
Including the Marvel ones, which is over 900 single issues.
It's a
on
fantastic deal.
It was something. How much was it estimated at?
Oh, it was in the thousands easily.
Thousands of dollars easily. If you want to buy those in digital today, thousands of dollars. Thousands plural. Yeah, definitely the best deal ever. They're trying to cash in on it one last time. You know what? They did. It was a great deal.
That was the last farewell thing that Dark Horse Digital did well before they had to partner with Comixology, because their app sucks.
And before we skip to the farewell, why don't you tell us how you got into Dark Horse?
Okay. I would pick up the occasional Star Wars comic book here or there, is because I didn't like reading, so my parents were like, oh, it has pictures. He'll read them. He'll figure out what's going on in the story because of the pictures. So like I had like some Infinities stuff, like Infinities Empire Strikes Back random issues. I had an issue of Republic that I wish I still had, issue 68, which was a cool one-off story with Anakin. But the first one I really picked up completely was first I started really getting into it when Revenge of the Sith came out. And I had bought the first 2 issues of Revenge of the Sith, the comic, the movie adaptation, and I bought them at a mall. And I went into a clothing store to try on some clothes as a kid, and someone stole them. And I was absolutely devastated. And so my dad went out and he bought the trade of Revenge of the Sith, and that was literally the first comic books that I ever read. I still have it back there. And then I'm like, I want some more. I want to know what led up to Revenge of the Sith from Attack of the Clones. So the first volume of Clone Wars, which was, Matt calls it Star Wars, the second series. I call it Republic because that's what it ended up being turned into. It'd be Republic issues starting with issue 49, and I worked my way through the Clone Wars into Revenge of the Sith that way. And then I also started picking up whatever I could, Rogue Squadron, such, and then I was collecting singles at the time. I collected Legacy for a while. I collected KOTOR. Those were like my go-tos. A little bit of Dark Times, and then where I got comics disappeared. They went out of business. It was a Walden Books, if anyone remembers what Walden Books was. And then years later, I still picked up trades all the time, and then I got burnt out on Star Wars. And then Brian Wood's Star Wars was coming out, and I found a comic book shop in the city next to where I live. And I've been hooked ever since. I mean, the videos prove it on here. Um,
And you actually called in on a very good error there.
I did. Yeah, it was before Filoni got his hands on that era and ruined it. Um,
Yeah.
much to some of my fans' dismay, I do not like Filoni's Clone Wars, and it ruined that era. But I remember hyping up. Remember when Rebellion was coming out, Matt? Like when they switched Empire over to Rebellion, and they had that awesome. The aftermath of what happened with the people on Jabim.
Right.
Which is still one of my all-time favorite comic book arcs of all time, and just a perfect example of the EU tying together in a perfect little bow.
Oh, definitely. Those were great books back then. They did a great job with them. You caught in on. Honestly, again, I'm going to say this: you caught in on a really good time. Even though right now, I've been reviewing a lot of the early, episode 1 books they had coming out, and as I was reviewing them, I just started realizing that they really did a great job fleshing out characters from the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it wasn't for the the comic books, because the books didn't go into all these characters. So if it wasn't for the comic books, we wouldn't have known, probably a big majority of people on the council. Like I made the joke in one of my videos, there's guy with horns on his ears, and there's long neck dude, and there's a girl with dot on her head. I didn't know who they were. You didn't know. The books didn't cover all these characters, but the comic books could. And Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas, you get to see him and what he looks like in one of those earlier books. So there's a lot of stuff that Dark Horse gave us that really complemented both the movies and the expanded universe. I know we're talking about the expanded universe, how they complement that, but they complemented the movies. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing, they complemented more of the movies than they did the expanded universe. They were concerned with fleshing out characters from the movies and making it interesting, because who wouldn't want to know about that and that? Well, the casual fan just sits there and enjoys it, with their popcorn, which is great. But you got, I hate to say it again, but I'm going to say hardcore fans, but that's what they are. You have hardcore fans going, I wonder who they are. I wonder what their story is. I wonder what they do. And that's what the expanded universe brought us, through book form, but also comic book form. And that's what Dark Horse did through those episode 1 days. Episode 2 days, they definitely fleshed out the Clone Wars. That was probably the best stories came from the comic books from the Clone Wars at that time.
It was an event, but it was an event done correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't an event in what a comic book event is today. So, they had to compete with Marvel Civil War happened during this. So Dark Horse had to compete with what Marvel was doing at the time. So they had the Clone Wars, and that's what Republic ended up becoming.
Right.
And it took every aspect of the war and really flushed things out.
So, if I have to move back, just tell me, skipping to the end of Dark Horse, I have a question for you. Oh, go ahead.
Before we get that, maybe we should go through the heyday of Dark Horse, when they were...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Firing on all cylinders.
When would you consider was the heyday? Mr. I jumped into it late. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
For me, just when I go over the comics that I love, I really think the heyday were the mid-2000s. For me, because that's when, the biggest comics that other than the old one, because they were hitting home runs at the beginning, but the ones that seem to resonate with people the most are KOTOR and Legacy. I myself being a big Legacy fan, and I know a lot of people love the KOTOR comics.
Mm-hmm. I'm the big KOTOR fan here.
That is very interesting, because the beginning was really good too, but that's not their heyday.
It's really good,
yeah.
But some things, like when I introduce people to Tales of the Jedi a lot, if they want something different, and a lot of people just hit or miss with them. The same with Dark Empire. A lot of the early stuff, in all honesty, some of it's just too weird for the modern comic goer.
But do you know what, though? Honestly, if someone were to ask me where to start, well, maybe not. Tales of the Jedi is a good place to start, though. But you're right. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Tales of the Jedi could lose someone who's not used to the style,
Yeah.
the attire that they wear, the kind of storyline. They may have been like me at first when I didn't know. I just knew what Tales of the Jedi was about. Like it happened 4,000 years prior to Star Wars. I was like, prior to New Hope, who cares what happened 4,000 years? That's dumb. And that's what I used to think until I actually started reading them, and I was like, I care what happens. It was a fantastic story. So, and they did a really good. I mean, Veach led off with a good story, and then Anderson took over, and it was flawless. You could not tell the difference in writers, which is very rare today. Because on comic books, I hate. First off, I hate when they change the artist midway through a story. I hate that.
Oh yeah, same.
But just the same, well, maybe a step below artists. Artists would be the number one. But when they change writers in between, you can tell because the dialogue's off, the story's not as strong. You're hoping that so and so gets back in so it can be interesting again. Again, like I said, in one of my videos about Dark Horse Comics, when what's his name? He wrote Star Crash. It was horrible, and you could just tell it wasn't a John Ostrander book. I mean, it wasn't his writing or someone else's. John Ostrander, I'm just using him as the tempo because I just think he was just amazing.
Oh yeah.
But when that other person came in, his name escapes me now, and wrote Star Crash, just a one-shot, just maybe a filler comic book. It was garbage, and you could tell the writing was garbage for it. I mean, the art was decent, but the thing is, though, you can have great art and it's just a garbage of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And it just defeats. It's sad. It's wasted art in that case. And there's a few comic books like that have good, decent art, but just terrible story.
I mean, that was a lot of the end of Dark Horse Star Wars.
The end had more misses than hits, probably so. I'd give you that. I mean, I've said my grievances about some of the things I just didn't like where they were going with. Mm-hmm. There were some things I did like at the very end. Dylan, did I answer your question about the heyday first?
Yeah, I think you did.
Okay. Well, at the very end, I was collecting them all, of course, when they came out, and probably maybe one out of the 4 stories were really interesting to me, and the rest of them were just there, Yeah. It's like they were trying to get their footing on what to do next, and they were obsessed with the miniseries. And that's one thing I didn't like.
That's called the Mike Mignola thing. Mike Mignola at Dark Horse has made that a trademark for them, period. It makes all sorts of money when you have a number one. It's a cheap way of doing it.
The thing with, you're talking about Hellboy, right? With all the spin-offs?
Yeah, well, that whole Mike Mignola verse now in general, but yeah, it started with Hellboy.
But it BPRD or whatever, yeah. That kind of stuff works in his environment, in his setting, because he's taking different characters and putting them on different adventures, but he has an overall story thread going through in a way. Like when Hellboy's missing, they're continuing on the stories without him for a while, and then he comes back in another miniseries. I understand that, but that's not even what Dark Horse is doing. Dark Horse is doing they weren't even connecting these stories overall. It was just an adventure idea, and they just ran with it and slapped Darth Vader's name on it, or just something else, and it got tiresome because there was a lack of effort. Not overall. Overall, I think they had some really good stuff coming out in their last days too. I mean, I think we've all talked about this before at one point or another, but the second Legacy series, I was interested in seeing where that was going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had some good ideas in it.
It had some great story plots in it, and I was interested. I was hooked. Dawn of the Jedi, there's a good example. They were coming out with miniseries. It wasn't an ongoing series, but they were mini-seriesing it up. But they were story building as they were stacking those miniseries out, and I was interested to see where that story was going. So there's a lot of stuff they could have done right. I mean, I heard they were going to look into another Nomi Sunrider, another Tales of the Jedi, not Nomi, Vima.
Vima.
And explore her character. But a lot of that stuff would have been interesting, and it would have been awesome. And I just don't know, shoulda, woulda, coulda for Dark Horse. But they did have a lot of hits rather than misses in their last days. But let me ask you this. Let me pose this question. If Disney doesn't own Marvel, okay? Or Disney doesn't buy Star Wars, some other company does. Should they have kept the comic books with Dark Horse? Because at the point, are we in agreement that Dark Horse in their twilight years was kind of fading with Star Wars stories?
Yeah, well,
Or am I standing alone on that? Because that's fine if y'all disagree.
well, let's talk about what was coming out at the end, because it was kind of really just poor choices. What we had, the only thing that was really different that was coming out at the end was Legacy 2, which was just a sequel series to Legacy.
I would add Dawn of the
we
Jedi.
had-
Dawn of the
we had
Jedi was
Dawn
coming
of
out
the
too.
Jedi.
I would
Which
add
of the
Dawn of the
two
Jedi to that list.
I've actually read, so.
But I mean, we had another Star Wars ongoing in the Rebellion era, which literally had no space for that. That they ended
Right.
up ripping off Bantam books of all things.
Right.
We had the Star Wars, the Lucas Rough Draft, which was garbage. We had a couple Darth Maul miniseries from the Clone Wars.
Weren't so bad.
Knight Errant.
Knight Errant was coming out with a few things. You had Agent for the Empire.
Oh, that's right, the James Bond one. That was a fun one.
You had Rebel Heist.
Which I never read because it just didn't appeal at all. Because I was so fed up with Brian. Brian Wood, in my opinion, is one of the worst comic book writers of this era, by far.
They had a lot going on, but let me ask you, with all that, would you take the rights away from Dark Horse and give them to someone else? Marvel, DC, Image, whoever, I don't care. Would you have done it, or would you have tried to keep it with Dark Horse and kind of give them guidance? What would have happened? What would you do? Because I understand this decision Disney made, by the way. I even said this in one of my videos, that does not surprise me because they have their own comic book company. They own their own comic book company. Why not just get the rights back to Marvel? It makes sense. That made business sense. And honestly, that didn't really upset me. I mean, it kind of sucked, because, Dark Horse was there for the EU when no one else wanted, because Marvel was threw it in the trash back in '87. So Dark Horse picked it up out of the trash, ran with it, did some great work with it, and then toward the end, maybe got a little lazy on the stories. Not all of them. Like I said, it's more 50-50 at the end. But would they, if Marvel was not owned by Disney, would they deserve to lose the rights, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, because it was, if you look at it at a business standpoint, Star Wars was doing absolutely terribly.
Right, the last ones weren't really selling as well. They were, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've checked these numbers, but I think they were in the 70s. When I looked at the top-selling comic books back then, because I always check that stuff, and I don't think any of them got. I mean, every once in a while you'd have one that get up to 40 or something, or the 40s or 50s, but I don't think you had anything within the top 20 at the time coming out. Yeah, it was all hitting around the 70s.
I think they should have just switched. They should have switched publishing companies, taken it to another independent, like something like IDW or Boom. That in turn, with their marketing, that would have just really soared them up. The price tag.
IDW is a good choice. That's a good choice.
I think it was. Again, I think Dark Horse may have had a bit of the blame, but I think the blame is more on the authors, on the who they were putting forth. I mean, I think we all agree Ostrander, just hits home runs after home runs. Obviously, we're not talking about Ostrander.
John Jackson Miller does really well too.
But he's more hit or miss because he did great with KOTOR, but then failed with Knight Errant.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the Knight Errant comic as much. I didn't like Knight Errant as much, I should say. I wanted to. It sounded good. It was okay. I was kind of interested, but at the same time, I just couldn't sink my teeth into it like I could Knights of the Old Republic. Plus, some of that cover art was horrible. Some of that art was horrible in Knight Errant. I mean, just, ugh.
Yeah, that was half-assing it.
But see, that's the thing. Why, when they took so much care of it at the very beginning? I mean, you hear about. Well, I mean, I heard about Dave Dorman tell me what all care and structure went into making sure they brought out a quality project. And when they brought out that quality product, it sold. It sold big. And somewhere, I don't know where, I can't pinpoint it. Dylan pinpoints it in the mid 2000s. But maybe as I'm going through the timeline here, maybe I can help. Maybe that'll help me pinpoint where they lost their compass, where they stopped caring about high quality.
I can tell you exactly where they lost it.
Where was that?
They lost it during Vector. Now, it didn't damage everything immediately. Vector was an event I complain about on almost every Star Wars Reviewers episode because Edward or someone else brings it up and it makes me all pissed off again. Vector was a cross-through event with one character and a Sith artifact, and it went from the 4 comic series that were ongoing at the time, which were Knights of the Old Republic, Dark Times, Rebellion, and Legacy. Although the Knights of the Old Republic and Legacy did very well with it, and they wrote a good story because it was John Jackson Miller and John Ostrander, the middle 2 suffered, and in fact, Rebellion ended immediately once Vector was done. That, in turn, I think was the beginning of the end, because nothing really spectacular came out once Legacy and Knights of the Old Republic ended. We had some interesting ideas like Dawn of the Jedi and Legacy 2, but nothing was up to par with anything after that.
That's interesting.
I mean,
I personally enjoyed Vector, but we've talked about this before. But that's an interesting point, though. I can't argue that point. I have to look into it. That's sounds interesting. You may be right there.
Because I'm thinking, what came after all that? Invasion? That didn't last long.
And then all the Clone Wars for the tie-ins with the stuff. That's when that started.
No one ever retailed that. That's how weird it was. None of it ever got retailed, like the Filoni stuff. Because I have one, and that's because I bought the deluxe edition of that terrible movie. But they didn't start retailing that stuff until Darth Maul Death Sentence happened. That was near the end. Invasion, places like Barnes & Noble didn't carry that, or Knight Errant, or any of that sort of thing. I mean, I'm trying to think of what else came out after that. I think Crimson Empire 3, Empire Lost came out, which was 8 years too late on that front.
That was a missed opportunity. I agree. They should have struck while the iron was hot. What was the official reason for that delay? I don't remember right now. I remember they gave it.
It's the same team on it, in all honesty.
And they just couldn't get together in 8 years to put it together and get it done?
Yeah, I don't know. Crimson Empire 3 is awful. I can't wait to review that. Actually, yes, I can wait to review that. I just remembered how they switched Luke and Leia's characters and made Luke this very jerkish sort of person, not open to anything. And Leia's the one that's completely open to Kirk Canos being part of the New Republic or whatever, which didn't make any sense.
If you don't mind, let me ask a question to the listeners. Listeners, who do you think, where do you think Dark Horse started going downhill? Let's let them ponder on that.
Yeah.
Because it'd be interesting to hear what you think. And do you disagree with anything? Obviously, you don't disagree with anything I say. I know that. But do you disagree with anything Jeremy says? I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Matt, you don't know this, but simply because you're on this will now be the most viewed Legends.
I mean, if we go by the Django Why We Love the EU standard, I mean, you doubled that podcast's views. So much so that he could never top it and ended it.
Yeah.
No, I think he ended it because he got bored of it or something.
Oh, the network's been talking about the Trump bump. Well, you got the Wilkins. Wibble and wobble.
Oh.
Wait. Guys,
Isn't that what a TIE fighter does? Is wibble and wobble?
Yeah, when a battle droid flings into it, that's why it wibbled and wobbled, so that it made the situation even dumber than it needed to be.
Now, I see what the thing is. I don't like the Matt Wilkins wibble and wobble. Does that mean I'm a homophobe?
Yeah,
Is that how that
yes,
works?
it does.
you're
Yes,
a
it does.
cisgen male. The
Okay.
SJWs are going to get you.
Got it.
Well, they were already going to get us because we associate with someone called Ordo. You might have heard of him. He kind of makes horror. He has one supporter. I don't remember her name. What was her name?
Hold on, I have someone here who wants to talk to us.
Chuck.
You don't like my book?
Oh shit!
This is Chuck Wendig. You don't like my book?
I explained to you. Did you watch my video, Mr. Wendig? I explained to you how to actually write a book correctly.
I did, bigot.
Oh, here we go. I'm going to get crucified by the SJWs here.
You know what? I wrote that in 45 days. I didn't sleep, but I drank a lot.
Oh, it explains a lot. Can you tell me why you decided to have a battle droid that was actually dumber than the Filoni battle droids, and you called it Mr. Bones?
I jumped. Bang went the droid. Droid fall down. Go boom. Make nuts and bolts in his pants. Chapter 12.
You forgot the interlude, Mr. Wendig.
We don't need an interlude! Bigot! Dare you make fun of me in my book? You know I'm writing a trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Part 2. Aftermath. More money for me.
Now, Mr. Wendig, what are you going to do now that Amazon has cracked down on the 5-star reviewers?
Amazon's full of bigots. I'm gonna Facebook stalk them. Hashtag I hate Amazon. Hashtag Amazon bigots.
So, Mr. Wendig, in your interludes, are you ever going to continue those stories that, disrupted your main story? Or are you just going to add even more interludes with characters we don't care about because we have no idea what their motives are?
More interludes with people you don't care about. But I care about them, bigot.
Well, I'm glad someone...
You don't interrupt me! I am the almighty Chuck Wendig! Do thou not know? I am a best-selling author! It took me 45 days to get there. That's my laugh. Money.
How does it feel to still not be in the top 100 for more than 1 week, Mr. Wendig?
You would say that, wouldn't you? Bigot! Because there's a lot of bigots out there who hate my book, and it's your fault. Don't I sound like Gandalf a little bit? Watch my Gandalf impersonation. Thou shalt not be a bigot. What are you laughing at?
Nothing. It's just,
Listen to me, Sandler. I've heard your mouth online. I don't think it's funny one bit. I have an internal rage inside of me that only Oprah can quell. I love Oprah. I won't lie. That sassy woman snatches my heart. It makes me go thump, 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 and wibbles and wobbles in my chest.
True dat.
True that.
Like a moth. It digs and zags. Everywhere. Next question.
So,
next question.
What was it like failing in failing a third grade grammar school?
How do you spell bigot?
I don't know.
Dylan. I can use it in the form of a sentence too. Dylan is a bigot. 'Cause he doesn't like me,
Wait, who's
Chuck
that?
Wendig. Ah. All right, I'm gonna drink Dave Filoni's bathwater. I'll see you later.
Chuck Wendig, everybody.
What a second guest star.
What did I miss? Was he here? I just went to go get Yubna a glass of milk, and I heard someone, but my window's been busted out. What's going on?
Oh, you missed your number one fan, Chuck Wendig.
Oh, gone it. He was here? Man.
I mean, we agree on something.
Well, I guess we should just go ahead and end the show, because, I mean,
Wait, he wanted to tell you something. He left a message for you. He said something like you're a bigot, something along those lines. I don't know.
Is it because I hate his book?
But he said it would. Yeah, he said he would know what it meant.
Oh, okay.
We did agree on something, that Dylan actually is John Sadler.
I'm not.
I mean,
did Wendig confirm that?
Yeah, he did.
Because that's something I've been... Okay, well, if Wendig says it must be true.
Yeah. I mean, we can't disagree with him because we'll be bigots, so sorry, Mr. Sadler.
Sadler, it was going to come out anyway. All right, so anyway. All right, is there anyone else we want to trash talk?
Dave Filoni sucks ass.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, we haven't done what we're reading, which mainly it's probably
okay.
with
Dylan, no, wait, hold on. Jeremy, what are you reading? I know what you're reading. You were reading garbage.
I was reading The Human Refuse in my toilet.
And I was reading The Lost World by Crichton. Which, by the way, if anyone hasn't read those and you got interested in Jurassic Park because of Jurassic World, they're totally worth your time to read. The books are better than the movie. You're going to be like, no, that's not true. Yes, it is. They're totally better than the movie. I love both Jurassic Park and Lost World. It's been a while since I've read them, so rereading them was a quite joyful delight. Dylan?
I am reading Destiny's Way, New Jedi Order.
Okay. Still on that New Jedi Order train, you know. He skipped Invasion.
There's 19 books and 2 ebooks. It's going to take me a while to get through it.
Well, the thing about Invasion, you don't have to. You can read it.
Yes, he does. He needs to finish it.
If you want to, Dylan, you can read Invasion. You don't have to, but...
I'm a third of the way through Invasion. I don't want to read it.
If I'm going to be reading Dark Knight Strikes again, because I just finished Dark Knight Returns, then you need to finish Invasion, because it's got better art than this.
I don't read comics for the art.
Yeah, why would you read comic books for the art, Jeremy?
Chuck Wendig told me.
You just like looking at pictures?
Especially when they move. No one understands that reference when we do it on here.
It doesn't matter.
Understand it more on Minox Nest doing it.
It's funny. Funny.
It is funny, but no one gets it. No one was there.
Always the inside jokes.
Oh yeah. Anyway, I think that's it for everyone. Are we done?
I guess so.
I believe we are. Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. So I appreciate you picking up.
Yeah, it's good, man. It only took 2 months to schedule you into this. Next up,
and approximately 2 hours of technical difficulties to figure out how to get you on here.
Yeah. I grew a beard in that time. It did take a while. Join us next time when
Got your money's worth.
hopefully it's not like 4 months away. And I'll probably talk about Battlefront and whether it caused me to pickle my liver even more than it did the other night when we could have recorded last week, but I decided to party. Or, I don't know, maybe I love it and I came so hard that I died of dehydration, in which case it would be the final episode. So, we'll find out if I Django or not. Yes, that's right. We're coining Django as a verb for Splooging. Have a nice night, people.
Ladies, we're still running the Win a Date with Dylan contest.
That's
to enter, all you need to do is contact our buddy Dylan. Now, travel arrangements can be made, but Win a Date with Dylan is on right now, and believe me, you want to get on this now. Jeremy, anything else?
I mean, that hairpiece is 100% real. I mean, anyway, guys, have a nice night. Peace out, Girl Scouts. And stay frosty.